Hello, fellow writers. I'm Lewis. That over there is Tolkien, and you have found the Scripturient Society.
Welcome back, you beautiful people. That over there is Karissa Harlow, aka Catherine, aka Lewis, and I'm Ash aka Tolkien, and I am also on time today.
Yeah.
Hooray for me. Everyone's like, it took you 89 episodes.
To be fair, everyone listening is like, you're always on time for us because this comes out 2 days after recorded.
Yes, I always edit and get it ready for you guys on time. I'm just not ready for Karissa on time. I make her suffer.
You guys get better treatment than I do. What is this?
True. It's very true. Well, Karissa, how's your week been?
Okay. My week's been good. Let's see. Did anything exciting happen? Not really. I did my hair differently today. It's kind of curlier than normal, which is kind of fun.
What did you do differently?
So when it was still wet, I like divided it into a top section and a bottom section. And then I just like did like the twirly bun, where you twirl it and then you just like wrap it into a bun. And then I let it sit for like 24 hours.
Wow. So, nice. It looks great. It looks adorable.
It's like, thank you. It's like minimal work with maximum outcome, which is pretty great. That's what I like for my hair. So
that's what I'm about as well. Yeah. I don't put effort into this at all. So
yeah, this is experiment. What can I do that is the least amount of effort that will still look presentable in society? Because like I say minimal effort, and if you have curly hair, that's still like quite a bit of effort.
It's still effort. It's so you can never
this is like get half an hour versus 7 hours.
Yeah,
exactly. So
but
yeah,
funny.
So that's fun. Gosh, I don't think I have anything interesting from this week. My cousin got like pseudo engaged. I don't really know how to describe it because they are, I'm excited for him. It's great, but also they're not financially independent, so it's not gonna be for a while.
Oh yeah, I gotcha.
Is like, that's fine. I don't know how long the engagement will be, so I'm not like psyched about it yet because I don't want to have to like keep up the level of excitement for like 5 years. You know what I mean?
I got you. So it's like they've exchanged promise rings level, kind of.
Yeah, pretty much. I don't know what timeline they're working with. They might be like, wait, we're thinking 6 months. I don't know what they're thinking because I didn't talk to him. But anyway, so
that's exciting.
So that's good. But yeah, what was your week like? I feel like my brain just went kaput the second this recording started. So I'm like, who am I? What did I do this week? I don't know.
What a relief. That has been me. That has been me also for most of my week. I have left the sprinkler running 3 times this week, nice. Which doesn't sound like a ton, considering how much I have to water and stuff for farm stuff, but it adds up to so much water, and I was not trying to do that. And I used to be so good about it, and I still set timers on my phone. I don't know what's happening. And I know my phone's on silent because my silence button is broken. So by the way, everybody,
it can't be that.
You will hear my phone if it goes off. I don't care if we're like in a crowded movie. Like I'm trying my best here. But yeah, my phone's silence button is broken. But yeah, so I've gotten lots of that brain fog too. I got to go to a doctor's appointment today for baby, and Javi got to come for the first time.
Oh,
so
good.
That was exciting. Yeah. I had some really fun, crazy mood swings over the weekend, and I was like, boy, oh boy, I hope baby's going through a growth spurt, and this is just a hormone spike, and I don't have to up my meds again. And then sure enough, it went away, and I was like, okay, cool. So there was just like a hormone spike. We're good.
Yeah.
And then to go into the doctor today, and they measured baby. So we got to see like the whole ultrasound and baby moving around, and Javi never seen one before at all. So it was very cool. But they were like, baby is measuring exactly 1 pound. And I was like, baby was supposed to be 10 ounces this week. So I knew that little butt head was like growth spurt. Like I knew it. And I've also been so I'm like, there's no more room for the stomach to expand. All of my stomach muscles hurt so badly all the time. So I was like, I know that you are growing unnecessarily fast.
Okay. How tall is Javi? He seems tall to me, but I can never tell because I'm short.
He's 6 foot. Like exactly.
Okay, so that might just be a big baby. Okay,
It might just be a big
be
baby. And it never really crossed my mind that we might end up having like a bigger baby, because me and my siblings were all pretty small babies. I was specifically small and so short. I was like a weirdly proportioned baby, so short and fat. And Javi, I don't have any pictures of him as like a newborn. I only have pictures of him as like an 18-month-old. So I'm like, I know what kind of like, toddler you were. I have no idea what kind of baby you were. So
oh my gosh,
that's terrifying. Crazy. And he's got like really big shoulders. And I'm like, I know the army gave you those, but how much was natural?
How much is genetic?
Because I have to give birth to that. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I have, well, okay, they're not my friends, but they're like friends of friends of friends. And this girl, they're a couple, and she is 5'1", maybe. She's so petite. She's so small. He is like 6'2". And he gave birth to like, I don't even know, like a 10-pound baby or something like that. And I was like, good grief, girl. That sounds so painful.
That's terrifying.
Childbirth is painful anyway.
I know, like, but women
does it make a difference at that point? Does the size of the baby really matter?
I feel that it does. I'm probably more for your recovery than I think if you're in pain, you're in pain. Maybe if you have an like, if you have a baby that's much smaller, maybe you have an easier time comparatively. But I feel like when you get to like kind of the average size, which is about 8 pounds, somewhere around there, I feel like you probably are just in a lot of pain. But like there could be more tearing, it could be a much longer labor. I mean, I don't know. This is just, I'm not an expert, but I am taking a birthing class now. So now I know some stuff that other people don't, so I can be superior about it.
There you go. That's why you learn things.
But that's the only reason to learn things, is so that you can be superior. But I don't know. I'm not an expert on childbirth at all. But that's kind of what I'm gleaning from it, is like, it's just hard all around.
Right.
But because Javi today asked me, he's like, what's like the average size for like a baby to be born? I'm like, this man could not know less about babies or childbirth. Like genuinely couldn't. He was like, what's the cord thing attached to? Like the umbilical cord? And I was like,
a belly button.
I was like, are you? And he was like,
you have one.
Like, because I said, I want you to cut the cord. And he was like, I don't want to. And I said, this is very par for the course. You're going to. If I had it my way. Exactly. If I had it my way, we would go to a birthing center, but military insurance doesn't cover birthing centers because they're mean. And but I was going to make him catch the baby too, because he's got these big gorilla hands. I figure I'm like, even if he doesn't know what he's doing, like there's enough, space.
Surely
there,
he can't miss
area. Exactly. I'm like, he's not going to miss catching the baby. But now we're going to be at a hospital, which is great. It's fine. But so I'm like, at least you're going to cut the cord, because if I have to go through this whole process, the least you can do is endure the discomfort of cutting the cord after the nurses have clamped it. But he was like,
I would prefer that job over the
cord go. Exactly. He's like, is the rest of it just like inside you? And I was like, my dude,
like look down at your stomach. Do you see anything strange there?
So I was like, do you not understand? And then I had to explain. He's like, well, what happens to like the placenta? And I was like, you deliver the placenta. Like, it's not going to stay in there, just like go away.
Right.
And so it was super funny. I know in my head, I'm like, yeah, this guy's never thought about childbirth or babies. Like, I know, like he doesn't know anything about them, but then he'll say things or ask questions that I'm like, wow, like, less
this is so
than I thought.
less knowledge than I thought you had. Yeah, and I was like, already, the bar was low.
The school system is so failing everybody, but especially the dudes, if they don't know any of this.
I do remember, I think I took like a child development class online in high school, and it like, it kind of briefly went through childbirth and stuff. And it was like a very, it was the first like gender neutral like child type class, like childbirth class I'd ever taken, and it talked about like the afterbirth and everything, and I was like, why has no one told me about this? Like, I've never heard of this before.
And they don't. Well, and here's something new I learned in my birth class that I didn't know. The placenta. Okay, I don't care if you guys don't want to hear this. You're here now, and you're going to hear it. Okay,
it's fine.
Just
the
skip
notes
ahead
are
to the notes below, whatever. But the placenta, so it's what feeds the baby, which I'm saying for any of our potentially male listeners out there who didn't know that, because Javi also did not know that.
Because this is something she has dealt with before. So just saying.
So just in case you don't know, that's what it does. It provides nutrients to the baby, and it's also in the uterus. So also you have to think about when you're like, oh, okay, so my baby's a pound, right? Which is more than I thought, which explains why I was like, my hormones are spiking. I feel like I'm gaining weight much faster, like the last few weeks than I have prior in my pregnancy, which is what happens. I'm in my second trimester. But also your placenta weighs a lot, and it's also in the uterus. And after baby comes out, the placenta's got to come out. But here's the thing. Baby's free floating in there. The placenta is not. The placenta is attached to the wall of the uterus. So when you deliver the placenta, it leaves a dinner plate sized open wound on the inside of your uterus, which I just didn't know at all. And
Oh, gosh.
I was like, that is horrifying.
That's okay. Again, not to be, is that like what menstruation does? Or is it, I mean, I assume it's significantly worse, but like, sort of.
The concept is not entirely dissimilar. It's not when you're menstruating, it's not, and again, here's all the education for all you boys out there who didn't want to know.
This is good. You need this.
You should know this. This is just very basic. It happens to 50% of the population once a month. So here we go on a really basic anatomy lesson that apparently public school is not teaching people. When you're menstruating, what happens is it's not an open wound situation like when you lose the placenta.
Makes sense.
But it is that the inner lining of the uterus, which is where the placenta is.
Right. That's kind of what I'm thinking. Yeah.
All of that comes off. And the way it comes off is by basically your uterus having seizures. Okay.
I always picture it like a horse. Like, did you ever see Spirit? Like the bucking bronco thing? I always imagine it like that. That's exactly
what it is.
Like, I'm just going to shake until this falls off.
That is the best analogy I've ever heard. And that's exactly what it is. And that's why it's so painful is you have an organ that's literally just convulsing so violently until it can shake off the entire inner lining. So that's what menstruation is. And the losing the placenta, I mean, a similar concept where you're losing some of the inner lining, but it's like leaves a big open wound instead.
Right. Because it's more solid.
Yeah, because it's more, and it's been there for 9 months, like growing and stuff. So I didn't know that and was shocked that that was a thing that they're not teaching anyone. And I was like, what?
Interesting.
Yeah. So I have that to look forward to. So I'm like, I made myself, because I'm like a super planner. So I made myself wait until I hit my second trimester to start my birthing classes and stuff, because I was like, I'm just going to obsess about it and finish it right away and then have nothing else to do, because I've already planned everything else that I can. So I started it, and it's really interesting. If anyone is looking for a good birthing class out there, I'm doing the Mighty Mama movement. And it's specifically if you don't want to get an epidural. It's not like super crunchy. You can be like super crunchy and really enjoy the class, or you can be like me and just be like, I just don't want an epidural and I don't want to give birth on my back.
Super crunchy? What does that mean?
Have you heard that?
No.
Okay. Oh my God. This is so oh my God.
Do you know slang something. I don't know?
I know slang that you don't know. This
what is
great.
Happening? Okay.
I don't even think this is super recent, but I learned it from my sister, from my little sister.
Okay. So this is a Maddie thing. Got it.
Yeah, this is a Maddie thing, but it's also apparently just like a culture thing. So crunchy, think like granola. I think this is where it comes from, because I've heard some people be like, oh, that's so granola. And that took me a while to get used to.
Okay.
It means like kind of like hippie, like earth mom vibes, you know? Crunchy is like crunchy moms specifically tend to wear like the loose fitting dresses and use only glass bottles, and like everything is homemade. Nothing is store bought. So crunchy is just like excessively homegrown, all natural, no medicine, no whatever. And there are degrees of crunchy. So there's like anti-vaxxer crunchy. There's like crunchy. I would rather try the holistic methods first, which is kind of where I fall. I have no problem with modern medicine. Boy, am I glad that it exists. Yeah. But I'd like to try the natural stuff first. And then there's like just the people who are kind of interested in it. And so previously, I don't know what we were calling this. I just like kind of hippie-ish.
It needed a name. It needed a name. So this is good.
And society recognized that need. And now we have crunchy. And so as if you guys didn't know, this is also now a grammar lesson or a vocabulary lesson.
This is a writing podcast.
Yeah. So super granola, super crunchy. Those moms would love this course, but you don't have to be super crunchy to like it, because I'm not, but I really like it. And I'm psyched because my doctor is probably the opposite of crunchy. She's like, you can tell that she's
most doctors are.
Most doctors are. That's the thing. It's not uncommon. Most doctors are. She is aggressively not crunchy. And I think she was so kind and didn't say anything about how she thinks that I'm silly for not wanting an epidural, but I can tell that she kind of does. And she thought it was crazy that I didn't want to get all these extra shots while I'm pregnant. I was like, can we talk about that after I'm pregnant? Like, I'm not against it, but like, I feel like right now is maybe
we're getting ahead of
just put it
ourselves.
off. Yeah, exactly. And I could tell she did not she made it very clear, in a very polite but very shaming way, that she did not approve of my choices.
Doctors.
Yeah, exactly. But the thing is, I had someone be like, you should just look for a different doctor. And I was like, I kind of feel like this is going to happen with any doctor that I can get, because my insurance doesn't cover like the more like holistic centers and stuff. So, and I'm fine with it. I understand that that's where doctors are coming from. That's where all their education is too. So I don't mind, as long as they'll still let me do what I want to do. Like, I'll listen to what they have to say. That's fine. And if they're not being like openly mean to me, I'm like, we're going to philosophically disagree. It's going to happen. It happens with everyone in my life. So you know what? It's not, it's fine. I don't care.
Just a doctor. I'm not like gonna sit and have Thanksgiving dinner with this person. So
exactly. Because I was like, philosophically, they were like, do you like your doctor? And I was like, philosophically, I don't think we could have a conversation outside of like this medical practice at all.
Right.
But do I think she's a highly competent doctor who's been doing this for 20 years and can definitely deliver my baby safely? Yes. And that is her job. So I don't have to like her personally.
Yeah.
She could be a totally nice person. I just know that we have nothing in common personally.
Right.
But I'm psyched because I got to ask my question. It was nice that I got to have hobby there for it. I'd been putting off asking things I wanted to ask, like, hey, am I going to be able to walk around while I'm in labor? Because some hospitals have a policy where you can't. And if you have like a more complicated pregnancy, then they might have to like strap more monitors to you, and you can't just because of that.
Yeah, I thought walking around like when you could was a good thing.
Yeah,
Isn't
and
that like
generally is
labor. Okay.
Yeah, most people agree. I think even most doctors agree with that one.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to double check, because some hospitals have weird policies. And then the other thing was, I don't want to give birth on my back. And there is loads of research. If anyone wants to just go type that into your Google search, you will. And it's actually really interesting, because it's not even like crunchy research.
How else do you give birth?
Okay, so here's the crazy. Okay, you guys, I know that we're 16 minutes in, but I'm going to teach you guys so much stuff because I think this is interesting. Like I said, skip if you don't care. The notes are below to skip. But I think this is interesting. Women did not give birth on their backs until like the late 1800s. And the only reason that became standard practice was because it's easier for the doctors. And there is literally absolutely no reason aside from that we have, it has become standard practice for women to give birth on their backs.
What was it like? They're just like squatting or like on their stomachs,
hands and knees, and on your side. These are like the three other kind of go-to ways. And if you think about it, it makes so much. This is why I'm like, you can go look up the research and it's not crunchy, which is why hospitals are kind of getting with it now. Like I asked my doctor, I was like, am I going to have to give birth on my back? Because I really don't want to. What are my options? And she was like, yeah, like they have the squat. So I was relieved to hear, because the hospitals are just now kind of allowing this, which is crazy when you look at the research, that there's no reason for giving birth on your back unless it's like a medical necessity because you have a complication.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it just seems like, I don't know if that's because I've always seen it that way or what, but it feels like the baby would fall otherwise. I always thought it was for the baby.
They have to catch the baby anyways, because they're at the edge of the bed with your feet in stirrups if you're on your back anyways. So
I guess that's true,
to catch the baby. But there's two main physiological reasons why it is so much easier to not give birth on your back. And this is specifically for squatting or hands and knees. But it's also
one gravity.
One is gravity, and that's the one that's for squatting and hands and knees.
That makes sense.
Naturally pulls the baby down. So when you're lying on your back too, think about anything you have to do on your back. Just like sitting up into a sit up from your back is hard. It's harder physically to do that stuff on your back. And so you're kind of like fighting like your body's natural strengths, whereas squatting on hands and knees is it's just easier. You have more support from the rest of your body. So there's that. I guess epidurals are also, when you have an epidural, you have to typically be on your back or on your side. You can't do squatting or hands and knees. But you can do it on your side too, which is cool.
Right.
So the other reason, aside from gravity, and this applies to pretty much any birthing position except for on your back, is your tailbone is actually flexible. It's not a fixed bone. It moves.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's attached. So if you guys are not, you're just going to have to pretend you can see my hands if you're not watching this on YouTube. But if you want
making a little square,
the diagram, I'm making like a little like kind of pelvis shape with my hand. Right. So this is your, like, if this is your hip bones, we'll say this is your hip bones. Baby comes down through here, right? You have tailbone back here that curves inwards. If you're lying on your back, tailbone meets baby. And baby has to squish by the tailbone. But the tailbone is flexible. So if you're not lying on your back, your tailbone can move, because it's flexible out of the way. And you have a lot more space for baby to come down through the pelvis, which is just easier. It typically means you don't have to labor as long. There's just more space for baby. You might have less tearing that way. So yeah.
My mind is blown.
I know, right? It's crazy
so insane.
if you look into it. And that is not like crunchy mom logic or anything, you guys. You can look all of that stuff up, I swear, about like the birthing positions. It just blew my mind because I don't even know how I stumbled across it. I think on Pinterest, I saw some mom saying, have you thought about like giving birth not on your back? And I was like, that's how you give birth, stupid. And then she like,
idiots.
She explained like the other positions, and I was like, well, I gotta look this up. If it's so much easier, why are we giving birth on our backs? And I looked it up, and that is the only reason. It's because it's easier for doctors, or if there's medical complications. But yeah, for like normal, like low risk births and stuff, that's the only reason why, which is just really funny.
So weird.
Yeah.
See, I have never thought about this stuff that hard because I have been told basically my whole life that if I ever like have a baby, I'm gonna have to get a C-section. So I'm like, great, childbirth doesn't matter for me. Unless like the zombie apocalypse happens and like I have to like give birth in a prison while zombies are attacking, you know. But otherwise I'm like, I'll just be drugged and it'll be fine. So.
I get that, but you know what? I still recommend Mighty Mama Movement, even if you're planning on a C-section or inducing or whatever, because it's just got like some killer like methods for like pain management, because you still have to like labor when you have a C-section. But then I guess the birthing positions don't matter. But there's stuff like they have found like hundreds and hundreds of year old, like they're called birthing chairs and birthing stools that literally like it's a stool specifically for women to sit and it has like a hole for the baby. Which is hilarious and just sounds so stupid. And I know this, if you picture it, all of it looks stupid. But you know what? To me, there feels like a little more dignity when I'm in control of the situation than just being on my back.
You know what else is stupid? A bed that is too short for your legs, which is like where the birthing bed is anyway. So, you know, it's all cultural.
So that's the thing. Exactly. So anyways, these are fun facts I'm learning during pregnancy. I'm sure you guys will get more as I learn more, but fun stuff to learn. Yeah, I have a wealth of other stuff I didn't know. I'm happy to tell you. And I'm happy to say that modern science is kind of catching up once again to what we already knew about some stuff, but like to the point where doctors aren't even debating a lot of this anymore, which is nice. Even my aggressively non-crunchy doctor was like, yeah, that's fine. And I was like, so relieved. But yeah, stuff like delayed cord clamping, which is a thing apparently they didn't used to do and they're doing again, which is good. You should. And I don't know why we stopped doing that. Putting the baby directly on your chest and letting baby just like be with you for, they call it the golden hour before you like whisk baby off for a bunch of tests. Which is stuff that seems like very common sense, but because birth has become such like I don't want to say like
sterile.
Yeah, it's become more of a sterile thing than like a like immersive, you know, connecting type experience with the people involved. And people are more like numbers, and I get it. It's because it's an industry, and I'm glad that hospitals exist. But I'm glad that we're getting back to some of like the common sense things that people were doing, like before we had epidurals and stuff. Because also epidurals don't always work, and sometimes they work and they numb the wrong half of your body, and sometimes they work, but they put it in the wrong way, which actually happens a lot, that they put it in wrong first, have to yank it back out of your spine, and then have to put it back in. And it goes in your spine, you guys, and it's not a little needle.
Sorry. Oh, okay. I see what you mean. You said yank it out. I'm like, they keep it in there the whole time? You mean like when they... Yeah.
No, they do keep it in the whole time. That's why you can't...
What?
They put the needle in your spine, and it's like attached to a thing. And you guys out there, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure, because that's why you can't move. You have to be on your back, or it will help you sometimes get onto your side.
I'm now very glad that I have a heart condition because I get to go C-section. Although, I mean, that's not...
They'll use pain meds,
epidural, but
it might not be an epidural. Yeah. So I just really don't want an epidural. Javi was like, no pain meds? And I was like, I just don't want an epidural. Like, I'm not anti-pain meds. I'm not even anti-epidural. They're great. Many women love them, but I don't want a needle in my spine. That's just my thing. I don't want that.
Fair. Yeah. And also most women throughout history didn't do it with an epidural.
Yeah. So that's the thing.
That's not what they died of. So that's not like an issue.
Exactly. I feel like I can do it because every woman that's come before epidurals has done it. So I'm not like trying to put myself, I also am like, here's my final fun fact about the Mighty Mama movement pregnancy thing, because it relates to free diving. So it's almost like I'm on a different topic, but I'm not. And then we'll get into book recs. But yes, it's so not necessarily breathing, but it is related to breathing. So some people call it like hypnotherapy or something, which is weird. In freediving, I don't even know what we call it. It's you kind of like pick like your happy place. And when you're training to like do like extended breath holds, your body starts to panic and think it's out of oxygen long before it actually is out of oxygen. So it's really about like mental self-discipline. And it's hard because every system in your body is telling you, you cannot do this. You're going to die. And there's a reason that you have this. And there's a reason that you don't do these breath exercises by yourself in case you overestimate your abilities and pass out. But so you kind of like go into a trance, like when you're doing your training, just to like keep calm, centered, keep your heart rate low. And it's basically the exact same method that they're training these women to do in the Mighty Mama movement for like laboring like through contractions. And I was like, heck yes. So familiar with this. I love this. One of my favorite things about freediving is seeing that your body is capable of so much more than you think it is without even pushing your safety limits. Cause I'm not one of those people like who free dives and is like, oh, I'm going to go till I black out. A lot of them do. And that's terrifying to me. I pretty well know my limits and I don't push them that far. But that's what's crazy is you're capable of so much more than you think you are, even without pushing your safety. And so I thought that's what I love about freediving. And I thought it was really cool that it like 100% applies to like this method for managing pain. So I'm also like, what a fun experiment childbirth will be for me.
I mean, the human body is so interesting because I've fasted before and I do like week-long fasts. It is insane how much mentally speaking your body will tell you you are going to die if you don't eat. Yeah. Like on day 4. And you're like, I'm not going to die after 4 days. Like I know this logically, but your body is just like, no, you're going to die. You need to do it now. Yeah. And it's so crazy. And I feel like water does that too. So like if you're thirsty, you get thirsty far before it's ever dangerous. But you sit there and you're like, I'm thirsty. I need water right now.
Yeah, you're like, I'm going to die.
Your body just prepares you.
Yeah. I had 3 water bottles this morning and then sitting in the doctor's office. And we were there for like so long because they were understaffed. I've never had to wait so long in a doctor's office. But sitting there for an hour waiting, I was like, I honestly think if I don't get water, I think I'm going to die right here in this chair. And I finally got up and was like, excuse me. Do you guys have any water somewhere? And they brought me a cup of water and it was gone in like half a second. And then on the way back, Javi got me a water from, we stopped at Dairy Queen and he was like, what do you want? And I was like, water. And he got me water and it was gone before we left the drive-through. And I'm well hydrated, but my body is like, you're not, you could die.
This is my theory. I'm not like a doctor or anything, but my theory is that like biologically, survivally speaking, your body thinks you need a lot of time to meet those needs. So if you don't have air, it's like you need to travel to get air. Or if you don't have food, you need to travel and hunt to get food. Or if you don't have water, you need to find it. So it tells you far in advance so that you are motivated to do that. But then like in a first world country in 2023, you're like, well, I'm going to die, but you're definitely not going to die.
You're like, you are within arm's reach of water. Just pick up the water and drink it.
You are fine. You
go outside. Safety notice, you guys don't push the water thing though. No. Like you can fast, for like a week to 10 days and be okay. But I mean, do it safely, be within reasonable limits, Same with like, pain and breath holding. Like you can manage. I wouldn't play with the water thing just because it's the first thing it's the first thing if you don't have it that will hurt you. But yeah, I do agree. I think that I like that our body does that. It's like, I'm giving you time before you die. It's like your countdown. But there's more time on the countdown than it feels like there is. Yeah.
It tells you it's a shorter countdown so that you will panic earlier, but it's giving you time later.
Hey, the clock has started, just so you know. And it feels like in your head, you're like, I'm at the end of the last 10 seconds of this and I'm about to die. And really you have like, I mean, as far as like freediving goes, usually have like 45 more seconds. Yeah. Which is actually a lot. Like if you're underwater, like what
to get back up to the surface.
It takes like at the bottom of like I'm trying to remember like what you have to like do to like meet your requirements or whatever to get your cert, your basic freediving cert. In 15 seconds, you easily back up from the very bottom. 15 seconds. And when your body's like, you're going to die if you don't get air, and your body will start contracting and it's crazy. But you can like mentally teach yourself that that's not the case. You're okay. Know your limits so that you're not like, nah, I got loads of time. There is a countdown.
Yeah, there is a countdown, but there's
more than you think. Yeah. So anyways, fun stuff. Cool. I'm
Nice.
just learning some interesting stuff about the human body over here, and I thought you guys might like to know.
I mean, here's the thing. If you're a writer, this is good stuff to know, because if your characters are in survival situation, if you stayed through that whole thing, you didn't skip ahead, congratulations, you now
First,
have
thank
knowledge.
you. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And also now you have knowledge, so also you're welcome.
100% you're welcome. Yeah. Look at you go. You know so much now.
Yep.
I expect to be credited in your book.
Exactly. You can
I
write
want
with
to be
confidence. What is the thing? It's like the survival. Is it darn, I'm not gonna remember. It's like 3 minutes without oxygen, 3 days without water, 3 weeks without food, something like that.
I think it's something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Again,
so
do not go try that, guys. Don't test it.
This is for characters.
We're not liable. We're talking about for writing purposes. Yes. Be safe. Talk to your healthcare professionals, but also talk
even
to
if
the crunchy
they
ones.
philosophically disagree. Yeah.
Even
talk
if you
to the crunchy ones
disagree.
And the soft ones.
I think that's mainly my thing is I'm like, just talk to everybody.
The soft, the opposite?
I guess the crunchy ones and the soft ones.
Yeah.
Regardless, I think this is true across the board, but especially if you're like, this topic's kind of controversial. A lot of people have big opinions. I feel like best case scenario is like everyone is an expert in some part of it. So just talk to everybody. Like crunchy, like the crunchy quote unquote doctors, like the crunchy like healthcare providers are really good at what they do. And the aggressively non-crunchy ones are really good at what they do too. So, and they don't always cancel each other out. So I just feel like it's good to just get the whole picture.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Okay, also really fast before we go into book recs, in terms of slang that we didn't know, do you know what Riz is?
I've heard this, but I don't.
Okay, I heard this recently
because it sounds like Ritz.
Ritz, yeah. Riz is like how smooth you are when you hit on someone. So if you have Riz, it's like you're really smooth and you can like get a girl's number really easily.
So it's something you have. So it's like it's a noun.
Yeah, you have Riz.
Like he's got Riz.
Yeah.
She's got Riz.
Yeah.
I don't have Riz.
I don't have any. That's the singleness.
I have Ritz.
You know,
there's Ritz in the pantry.
Yeah. Does that count? Yeah. I have Ritz crackers.
I guess it depends. Are you involving them in your flirtation? You'd be like, hey, here's a Ritz cracker and also my number. Does that
you can have some Riz with Ritz.
Yeah. You know what? I think we need to contact Ritz in their marketing department. I really think this is something they can take off with.
Lacking opportunity. They are slacking on this opportunity.
100%. I'm so glad. You know, I've just specifically not asked about Riz because I don't really care about slang, but I have wondered, so I'm glad to know.
You're welcome. I was afraid to know because I thought it was going to be something way more sexual than it was. Maybe everyone is like, Karissa, this actually means this. This is what it means to me. I think this is this is the definition.
I like it. Yeah.
So I was afraid to find out. And so I tentatively was looking it up and then I was like, oh, that's okay. That's fine.
Oh, that's okay.
I can say that out loud.
Javi does that all the time. He uses words I don't know. And I'm like, what does that mean? And he won't tell me. He'll just say, look it up. And I'm like, I won't.
Because then you get like Urban Dictionary or like Teenagers Online and you're like, wow, that's not what I wanted.
No, it's not. And sometimes I'll be like, this is what the internet said. And he's like, that's not even what it is. And I'm like, I'm not looking at anything.
Then why don't you tell me, Javi? Jeez.
Yeah, exactly. He just likes to feel like he knows more than me. Mr. doesn't know where the umbilical cord goes.
He needs something. He's got slang. You've got like anatomy.
Yeah, I'm just basic understanding of the human body. I would like to think. Yeah, that's what I got on my side. Cool.
Woo.
Well, do you have any book recs?
I don't, which is why I felt okay taking up extra time in the earlier half.
Because I don't.
What is
either.
Yours? Oh, good.
I don't have any. So you guys are welcome. We actually the book recs thing. Yeah, that was a joke. We were just leading you on.
We were lying.
But we did accidentally a lot that time in a really useful way. You guys are welcome. So yeah, I have no problem with that. What about our word of the week?
Okay, I really like this one. And I'm gonna laugh, and I want you guys to understand that it's the whole scenario, not the concept. Anyway, okay. The word is Drapetomania. Okay, Drapetomania, and it is the overwhelming urge to run away. Now, you might think that this is a stupid word to laugh at. Here's why it's funny. So, in the 1800s, this term was coined to explain the psychological phenomenon. They thought it was a mental illness for slaves that tried to run away. And they were like, why would the slaves want to leave? Life is so good for them on these plantations. Why are they running away? They must be mentally ill. So they came up with this term. And then, this is the best part, the North was like, this is the stupidest thing we've ever heard. They're running away because they're enslaved.
Yeah.
And so they like did this satire. They did like these satirical essays where they were like, white indentured servants used to run away all the time. Maybe we brought it as a disease to Africa, and they're all sick because of us. And so really, it's our fault. And
that's hilarious.
Stuff. And it was so funny. So there was like this not war, but like this, these little essays going back and forth about Drapetomania and whether or not it was real. And so I'm just like, can you imagine being so convinced that your moral evil is necessary that you pretend that people wanting to get out of it is a mental illness? I think
they've done it to women funny. Across the board, across all races for all of history, and still do a little bit.
Yes,
so
that's true.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, I don't know. It just makes me laugh, but it also does just kind of colloquially mean Drapetomania.
Drapetomania. So is this like now like one of those words like that's actually means like
it just means like the overwhelming urge to run away now. Okay. So like if you're at a party and you really don't want to be at the party, maybe you have drapetomania,
Yeah. So it's become like a legitimate word.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Cool. Yeah, it's not like it's not considered a psychological condition anymore. So
oh my God.
The deep eye roll for those of you that can't see.
You can't see. It was a very deep eye roll. I felt that it deserved it. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's funny because the concept of having the overwhelming urge to run away, an absolutely real concept. Mm-hmm. Yeah, drapetomania as a mental condition because you're enslaved, and why wouldn't you want to stay enslaved? I just don't understand.
These slaves absolutely did have drapetomania. It just wasn't a mental condition. It was an accurate understanding of their reality.
Exactly. Oh my gosh. It's a little bit like women who used to get postpartum depression, and they'd be like, these women are like, they were like, they had like
crazy.
Weird, like, crazy, like hysteria and like a bunch of like other like weird terms for it. And I'm like, I mean, they are experiencing something valid, but you're entirely wrong about its reasons. Yeah. And how I do love
like the yellow wallpaper. Is it called the woman in the yellow wallpaper or just the yellow wallpaper? Where they're like, you're super depressed after having this baby. You know what we should do? We should not let you see the baby and isolate you away from all your friends and not allow you any of your hobbies. Yeah, that will definitely make you happier and fix everything. Solid plan. Man. Yay. 2 thumbs up.
I do not understand, but you know what? How much I'm glad we've made the improvements we have, but I have to say the fact it's still common that women just expect across the board that we have to give birth on our backs. I mean, how much progress are we really making? How does this stuff ever become standard? How does this ever become commonplace for even like a decade? How has this ever been acceptable as like a concept?
Oh my gosh, people like 100 years from now are going to look back on us and be like, what was wrong with these people? Like it's almost like becoming a first world country just means that you start to go slowly insane. And so like the better things get, you're like, let's create problems.
Yeah, what if we just
make everything worse
again? Yeah, I think that's exactly what humans do. But especially humans who are privileged.
Mm-hmm.
We're like, we don't have problems. Let's make it hard.
Yeah, it's kind of like, when like wealthy parents are like, what we should do? We should spend no time with our children so that they learn to hate everyone around them, including themselves. Like, okay, well, you have all of this time. You can spend time with your kids. Why wouldn't you create a healthy home for them? And then they have issues and they're like, this is a psychological condition. It's because you raised them badly.
Yeah, what if they were just good parents who had the time, money, and resources to be really present, and then they aren't. Yeah.
That's why the middle class does really well. Anyway, let's
hear it for the middle class.
Woo, they got a balance. They're not starving, but they spend time with their kids.
Class. Yeah. Woo. Yeah. It is the place to be. I do agree. I think there's a bit of perspective, but also like enough resources to not have to worry about your basic needs. Boy, is it nice.
Yeah. It is.
So Drapetomania.
And I don't hate the poor or the wealthy. I'm just saying
over here like
the middle class is probably the better place.
Them eat cake.
I hate the poor and the wealthy and the middle class. I just hate everyone.
Actually, that sounds like me. That's actually my line. Just kidding. I hate everyone. I'm not.
That's Ash. What is? Yeah. There's a word for that. They use it to describe House. The House MD. What is it? Not a misandrist. Not a misogynist. Anyway, it means someone who hates everyone.
Oh,
it's not a misogynist.
Whatever it is, it's me.
Women.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, misogynists.
Misanthropy? Anyway. I don't know.
We don't actually
Drapetomania.
know that much. Drapetomania is the word that we learned today.
Yeah.
Learning its current meaning and as well as its origin, which is
Exactly.
very, I know it's not funny, but it is kind of funny.
Right.
Like just
It's not funny, haha.
No,
But it's
funny,
also
like,
not funny weird. It's just funny.
yeah. It's like, wow,
Yeah.
people were stupid. And then
Yeah.
you go, oh no, people are still stupid. And then if you think about
Yeah.
it too much, you get sad. So we're going to move on to the theme. What's
Yeah,
our
fair
theme
enough.
for this episode?
Moving on, we are going to talk about editing, more learning for everyone. We're going to talk about editors and the different kinds of editing. So for you guys, obviously, who are writers, you're going to need editors, and maybe you do editing, but maybe you don't. And editors are very valuable.
Yeah. Or maybe you're just getting into editing and you're kind of like, what is this terminology? Because you can have the skills to edit without knowing the terminology before you really get into the field. And you can just you kind of learn it as you go in that case. But this is just kind of like a quick hits guide to like, here's what people mean when they describe these different types of editing.
Right.
Yeah.
So real quick spiel from me on why editors are necessary. They are necessary. And I feel this, here's the thing. I'm not going to hate on anyone.
Oh my God.
Okay.
I just have to real quick, you go. I have to reenact this for you so you can experience what I just experienced. Here is real quick my explanation for why editors are necessary. They're necessary. And that was it.
Self-explanatory.
It was so funny. Anyways, if you guys, again, if you weren't watching on YouTube, you're really missing out this episode between my anatomical diagram, my turkey's kissing diagram of how pregnancy happens, and just almost spitting Pepsi into the microphone. You're really missing out this episode.
So yeah, anyway, they are necessary. And again, I'm not going to hate on anyone. I will say that this is my biggest issue with self-published books. Okay. Is that oftentimes they do not get editors.
Yeah.
And if they do get editors, they only get one. And I understand editors are expensive, as they should be, because it's a very hard job. And it's a particular skill set that I feel like not a lot of people have anymore.
Yeah.
So I know that it's like hard for a lot of self-published authors to get editors. But here's the thing. As a reader, it's not really my job to fill in the gaps for your book. It is your job to give me the completed book. And if it means that you take extra time on the book, you have to save up for multiple editors, or you take an extraordinary amount of time to make sure that you are in, various states to edit your own stuff better. Whatever it is, I think you need at least one other set of eyes on it at some point. But I would say many more than that. Like the more eyes you can get on it, the better. And I do think, traditional publishing is going through this weird phase where they're not paying editors enough, and editors are not as essential. And I think that's really correlated to the fact that you're seeing more typos in traditionally published books, and that you're seeing more problems.
Yeah.
And I wish that we could just go back a little bit to where traditional publishers cared about editing. And then we could say to self-published authors, here's your standard. However many editors you need to get it here, that's what you need to do. Yeah, I can't even say that anymore because traditional publishers don't seem to want to hold up that end of the bargain anymore. So anyway, editing is very important. And here's why. A lot of people will say, oh, a couple typos aren't a big deal. They are a big deal because once I find more than one, I can give one. Once I find more than one, I am now skeptical and I'm looking for them. And now I'm noticing other problems that maybe I wouldn't have otherwise noticed. Now I'm noticing character problems. Now I'm noticing plot problems. Now I'm noticing that you use this word a lot, or that you've used this exact line before. And obviously that's a little bit because I'm a writer, and so I'm cognizant of that basically all the time. But I do think that readers, they might have their threshold at 3 typos instead of 1 like I do. But eventually they are going to start to notice, and it's going to take them out of the story because
completely.
Yes. Yeah. They're going to be taken out of the story. And because when you hit that typo, you're jolted. You're like, wait, that's not the right word. Or wait, that spacing is weird. And now you're out of the story, which makes you more likely to notice things you wouldn't notice before because you're trying to get back into it. It's kind of like I always notice problems in the first page of a chapter instead of later in the chapter because I have to get into the chapter first. Yeah. So I feel like a lot of times people think that editing is a thing that can be a luxury, but I think it is a necessity. So
I agree.
That's my little spiel on that. I think it's important. And again, I understand. I know they're expensive. I they should be. This is the problem, right?
Yeah.
Because they do a lot of work, and it's
Yeah.
enormously beneficial to the book. I think you just have to decide how good do you want your book to be, and then decide, we're going to go through all the types of editing, but then like which kind do you need, and how much time and money can you spend on it, and all of that. So it's my little just like, here's why it's important. Here's why it's important to know what editors exist and why and stuff.
I totally agree. I also agree. Editing is necessary because it's necessary.
Yeah.
It is though. It truly
credits.
is. Every single time that you have a repeated word, that one's hard for me because I tend to miss those a lot, and they happen. And also spell check doesn't often pick those up. So you might be like, oh, well, spell check's really good these days. It's not the same as Another Pair of Human Eyes because it can catch a lot, and it's good at catching a lot more than it used to, but there's certain things it won't catch. And besides, I mean, the stuff we're talking that we just gave examples of, that's just proofreading level stuff, which is, I mean, that's the very last step of the editing process and something I think everybody needs to have. But there are 2 other types of editing that come first that are also extremely important, and spell check is not going to help you with that one bit. But I do think that part of the reason that we're seeing more books even come out of like traditional like publishing companies that have issues is because yes, they are paying editors less. And I won't say the name of the company. And I really liked this company that I worked for, but it was a company I was working for on a regular basis, editing full-length books, manuscripts, fiction and nonfiction. And I turned in my edit. It was a copy edit or a line edit, which we'll talk about what that is later in the episode. And basically the owner of the company contacted me back and said, this is great, but this is too thorough. You're not getting paid to do this much work. I know how much work it takes to do and edit this thorough, and we're not paying you for it. So you're going to get burnt out if you're doing this, and we can't afford to pay you anymore. And partially because people don't have the expectation of they're going to have to pay a certain amount for good editing. So that's kind of happening across the board, even in my other freelance work. I have a freelance editing gig I'm doing right now. It's not for a book, thank goodness. But there's stuff where I'm like, this could be phrased a teeny bit better, but I'm getting paid like almost minimum wage to do this. So I can't afford to devote the time that I could be using for other jobs and other work to making this 100% perfect for minimum wage. So that is something you have to think about, especially because if you are on a budget, and most of us are, you'll probably look into hiring a freelancer. Freelance editors can be amazing, can be wonderful. I've done so much freelance editing work, but just know that there is truth to you get what you pay for. And it's not because the editor thinks they're hot stuff. I guess it could be, but mostly it's because especially people working freelance are working multiple jobs. You are not the only job they have. They're trying to fill up their calendar, their weekly schedule, monthly schedule with as many editing jobs as they can that they can get done well. So if they have to devote more time than you're actually paying them for to your book, they can't do it because they have other work it takes them away from that they're also getting paid for. So just know in that sense, like it might be the case where if an editor has a higher rate, it's because they're going to keep their calendar clearer so that they like exclusively work on your book. So you get that more in-depth edit. And if your book is in like amazing condition, you've already had a couple people look at it, maybe you don't need something that intense, which is something else we can talk about, like knowing like what level of editing you need. And not every book needs the 3 types of edits. Some books might need just 2. Usually you need at least 2. You can sometimes skip one of the first 2, but you usually need 2 of the 3. But if it's in amazing condition and you've been writing forever and you've already had some people look at it, maybe you don't have to like budget as much for really intense edits. If you can, still do, because it's better. But if you can't, then you might have a little flexibility. But just expect that you're going to probably need to save up for an editor that's worth it. Because there's nothing worse than paying an editor, even if you're like, oh, well, I only paid them like a few $100s. And it would have been it would have been like a few $1,000s to like pay an editor with more experience or who could devote more time to it. You've just wasted your money. If they've missed typos, if they weren't able to put in the effort that you paid them to do, you're going to have to hire another editor, or your end result is going to be about the same. It might be a little better, but it's still not doing the role. It's not doing fulfilling the purpose that you pay them to fulfill. And that's not their fault either if you're not paying them enough to pay for their time. Which is also why when I work with clients, I work on a sliding scale. So I'll usually request a sample of their book. And if it's in really, really good condition already, I'll charge less. because that means I don't have to pour in as much work to it because it's already in great condition. I'm not going to charge a book that's in I'm not going to charge the same price to edit a book that's in crap condition to a book that's almost near publication ready. That wouldn't be fair because it's not going to take the same amount of my time. So that's also something to think about, and maybe ask an editor if they're willing to consider a sample first, and do they charge on an individual rate? Some people have like a by word rate or a by page. That's standard for the industry, but for freelancers, I don't think it's out of the question to ask if their rates change based on the condition of the book. But then you also have to be like realistic. If they say this book is in, average or low to average condition editing wise, don't get offended. This is their job. And if you don't believe them, get a couple opinions. But I mean, there's my real quick hit on if you're like, I'm going to go out and get an editor right now. Right. Those are some things that might help you out.
Yeah. And also, to add to my point earlier about how you want as many eyes on it as possible, I do think beta readers count for this. They're not going to be editing, but those are eyes. And then also, if you have like writer friends like Ash and I have, we edit each other's stuff for free basically because we're editing each other's stuff. So you can trade services like that. There is kind of a movement on TikTok to do this if you really need something like that, because a lot of self-published authors are obviously working on budgets. And so if you can trade with someone, they edit yours, you edit theirs, then it's time, but it's monetarily free
service. But it's the same thing where when you're doing that, like, make sure you're putting in the effort if you trade with someone that you want them to put into your book. So if you guys are like on the same page and you're like, oh, I just need like a quick read through and like just your thoughts, that's one thing. If you're like, I would like an actual edit, that's different. So make sure you guys are on the same page, because if they do like a full on edit and you're just doing like a quick read through, like that's not a fair trade for their time. So
and be upfront about it. Say, this is what I want and this is what I'm going to do. Is that what you're going to do for me? So
exactly. But trading services can be great, especially if you know the quality and the skill set of that writer already. That can be a great way to do it. So, which is also why joining writing groups, I know we're all introverts, okay? Like, I don't like people either.
It's hard.
But joining those groups can be great ways to make connections with people. That's also why, not that you have to have a college degree to be a writer by any means, but pursuing some kind of higher education, whether it's, a college degree or it's, an associate's, or whether it's just like joining writing groups or like writing intensives, great ways to make connections with other writers who are also actively developing their skill sets.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. So we want to go over them now. So you said 3 types, and I separated mine into, I think, 6, because I went for 2 each, because they're just slightly different things. So do you want to go first?
Sure. I guess I'll give like the main categories, and then you can break them down further. And some of these you have to also know, especially in the freelance world, are used interchangeably. Well, even like the pro world are still pretty much used interchangeably. Your first edit, and these are typically done in this order. So if you're like, I want all of the best editing for my book, I want to do all the stages of editing. And if you can afford it, I do recommend that always. If you can't, then we'll talk about, how you prioritize which ones you need. But if you can do it, I recommend all 3 stages, starting with a developmental edit, which is exactly what it sounds like. When you are developing your book, the development of the book, this is what that editor is going to look at. So the editor is going to read through the book. They may or may not leave comments in the margins. I do. Some editors don't. But you'll usually get a report that's somewhere around 10 pages, could be less, could be more, depending on the length of your manuscript, that basically has a really detailed analysis of things like structure, characters, setting, the things that make your story, that like all the building blocks of your story and your story's world, and even your series, that kind of stuff. That's all going to be in there. So even that stuff like the title could be stronger, like the weird, like little details you don't always think about. Inconsistencies, like big plot inconsistencies. Also, those will also be caught more in the next stage. So that kind of stuff. And it is a long report. And what I always do, you can also talk about what you're going to do with what the editor gives you, because you want to get the most out of it. I just think the best thing to do when you get that developmental edit, that report back, is to, if you have the comments, go through the comments in the margins, make a checklist of ways that you want to address the comments that they made. And you don't have to take every note an editor gives you, but do at least consider them. And if you have a question about it at all, ask for another person's opinion on it. Don't just assume, I think I can get away with not doing that. At least talk to someone else about it first and get another opinion.
Right.
And then you go through your report, highlight the stuff that you think is really important to you. Make notes of all of the stuff, like checklist form, bullet points, whatever, however it is that you keep track of your progress, and make sure that you have at least in your head, you've addressed every concern that the editor has brought up. And you can disagree sometimes. I haven't taken every note I've been given with a developmental edit. That's okay. But I've taken the majority of them, which I think is probably, if you have an editor that was
90, 95%.
a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a developmental edit. And that's like your kind of basic first round edit. If you can do it, love it.
It's big picture, basically.
Yeah. Big picture. That's kind of the thing, is we're just narrowing focus with these three. So
like developmental edit. Inverted pyramid. Sorry, I keep interrupting. Go on.
No, you're good. But it's true. It's exactly what we're starting from. Like, if the inverted pyramid, we're starting up the top, the widest bar. Developmental edit. If you guys need this visually, again, this is a very visual episode. So I guess just come see us on YouTube, you guys. The Scripturient Society on YouTube. It's under Story Siren Studio. I don't know if that's confusing. That's our production company. But anyways, so did I lose my train of thought? I had a good thought.
Pyramid.
Oh, yes. So if you're pyramid, so if you are a newer writer, in no way is this a criticism on you or even your talent or your skill set. But if you are a newer writer, at least invest in like a couple developmental edits, not for the same, book necessarily, but like if you've written a few books and you're a newer writer, invest in a developmental editor too, because you will learn so much about like the structure and building blocks of your book. Even if a lot of it's already there because you're insanely talented, amazing. But there's nothing like seeing somebody else who knows what they're doing break down the building blocks that way to your book. And it will help you become a better writer. That's ultimately the thing too, is when you hire editors and work with editors, you become a better writer. However, if you don't, it's a lot slower to become a better writer because you're just resting on your own feedback, not as useful. So editing is really, I know we think of it as separate from the writing process, but it really is a key part of the writing process of becoming a better writer. So if you're a newer writer, highly, highly recommend the developmental edit for sure. The second type of edit, broadly speaking, middle of the pyramid, the inverted pyramid, is the copy edit or line edit. And this is where some people have differing definitions of the two. Some people use them interchangeably. In my freelance world, I pretty much use them interchangeably because that's what most people in the freelance world do. But you always want to double check and make sure whoever you're working with has the same definition. But basically, this is where you go on a line by line basis. Your editor will go through your book, read it as a reader, but also as an editor on a line by line basis. They will mark things that you could change, and they might even change it with track changes on in Word. Always make them use track changes. If you're hiring an editor worth their salt, they'll already be doing that. But just clarify, make sure you know what software they're using. So track changes on, they'll make changes. They'll put comments in the margins so you can see. This is great for catching inconsistencies in the plot and characters, for changing word flow and word choice, for catching grammar mistakes that aren't necessarily like proofreading stuff. And it's not the same as a proofread. That's the thing too, is I've heard some people be like, it's interchangeable because, they're going line by line. So they'll catch the grammar. They're not looking at the tiny grammar details at that point. They're looking at overall, it's the flow and the consistency of the story. So super, super helpful. I love a good copy edit and line edit. They're my favorite edits to do actually, but they are also usually the most intense for the editors. So I do typically charge more for a line edit than I do for the other two. And then the final stage is proofreading, which is exclusively, and guys, I mean this, proofreading is exclusively catching typos, repeat words, like actual grammar errors.
Right.
That's all they're doing. Okay. And that's very, very important. And yes, you have to pay someone separate to do that because it is that important. But that is all they're looking for. So just know that they're not going to make word choice changes for you. They're probably not going to put recommendations in there unless they have a really strong feeling and they want to. But usually that's all it is. So I typically charge a little less for that. And I usually charge based completely on word count for proofread. So I usually, there's not as much because the quality doesn't matter as much. Proofreading takes the same amount of attention. You have
it's either
to be
right
focused.
or it's not.
Yeah, exactly. So that's one that, and I do recommend that for everybody because everybody makes typos. Everybody has repeat words. You can be the best writer in the world and it still happens. So highly recommend. So those are like the three big general categories.
Yes.
Do you want to break them down further?
So starting at that top of the pyramid, right, where I said developmental edit.
Yeah.
So there is developmental edit, but then there's also structural edit, which is slightly different. So developmental is, like she said, it's, this written report that you do. It goes over the plot and the character development and make sure you're being really coherent and that the progression of ideas is really good. A structural edit is very similar, but it will reorganize the structure for you. So if there's a scene and it feels kind of out of place, the editor is going to say this needs to go somewhere else. You talked about repeat words. If there's like repeat scenes in the sense that maybe there's a conflict and there are two very similar arguments that happen over the course of the book, a structural edit is going to say, condense those down to one, either place, but just kind of, keep it as short, as condensed as possible. I guess condensed is probably the best word. So structural is really going to be about the format that the book is following, on like the chapter basis, right? So should this chapter go here or should this chapter go there? That still big picture, but based on the format. And then developmental edit is probably going to include some of that, but if it's not specifically focused there, it is mostly just going to be on like the big picture plot issues, making sure that things are happening, not necessarily in chronological order, but in an order that makes sense. So if you're doing flashbacks, that those all make sense at the times that they're there, that they're written, that characters are developing and not backsliding and then going forward again, all of that kind of stuff. So I don't hear people talk about structural edits a lot. That's not really a term that's thrown around a lot.
I think they usually get rolled into developmental edits, because I know when I do a developmental edit, I also edit for structure. I think a lot of editors do, but that might be something, because it is technically a subset, to clarify with your editor. Like,
exactly.
Does a developmental edit with you include an edit for structure? Because it may or may not. I always do.
Right.
I think a lot of them do, but definitely ask.
Exactly. Because the thing about the developmental edit is really about that report at the end, like you said, 10 pages typically. So it's often going to give you like suggestions maybe, and like they're strong suggestions, but they're suggestions. Whereas the structural is probably going to give you a little more detail about how you can do it. So like Ash said, if you feel like like the manuscript has a lot of problems and you really want to make it the best it can be, just clarify that that's part of the process. Or you could even, if that's something you feel is the only real issue you have, you can clarify that that's exclusively what you want done, but it's mostly going to roll into a developmental. So then the next category in the middle of the pyramid is, so Ash said line editing, right? Yes. And then content editing is also what I've heard it phrased as.
Content editing, line editing, copy editing.
Right.
Often grouped into the exact same thing. But there's technically a difference. A lot of editors don't even know the difference. So don't feel overwhelmed.
Yeah, I had to look these up to refresh, because like I kind of know what they are. Line editing is really easy because it's literally line by line, but sometimes you're like, wait, are we using the same word for this? Because they are used a lot interchangeably. So content edit is like slightly above line edit if you're looking about like the inverted triangle or pyramid with how big picture it is. So content editing is going to be pretty focused on like paragraphs, right? So if you think developmental, it's like by chapter. Content is going to be by paragraphs. Line editing is going to be by sentence, but we'll get to that. So content editing is going to look at the paragraphs. It's going to say, does this paragraph flow? Does it flow well into the next paragraph? It is going to get into like sentence structure. It's going to clarify like the construction of sentences. So if you're using like too many sentence fragments in a row, or too many overcomplicated sentences, or too many commas, or they're kind of the strange punctuations like em dashes or semicolons, and sometimes you can use too many of those, and maybe it's a style thing, but maybe it's just too many. So a content editor is going to look at like your style and your voice and say, is this flowing as a whole on like the sentence level, right? But by paragraph. It's gonna so it's I guess I would call it's more focused on paragraph and style, whereas line editing is then just slightly below it, where it's line by line in terms of sentences. So it's going to make sure that the sentences are all, they sound good, they're being clear, they're effective in the way that they're being used.
They flow well together, like from sentence to sentence as well.
And that your word choice is good and all that kind of stuff. So like, again, we're just kind of like narrowing down to the finer points. So content is going to be slightly like, so line editing is going to be a little more intense. Like you said, it's going to be probably the hardest amount of work, but content editing is going to be a little bigger picture in terms of the flow. So again, maybe just to clarify, if, someone says, clarify, I offer content editing. Just make sure like you can ask, like, are you going to focus on the paragraph level or the line level? Or are you going to focus on voice, that kind of stuff? So
because for mine, I use them all interchangeably, because again, just like with developmental edit, for me, if you like ask for a content edit, copy edit, or line edit, for me, that means you're getting a line edit. I do the most intense of each of them, because that's what I would pay for myself. And that's what I prefer to charge for.
Yeah.
So that's typically what you'll get with me, but you do want to clarify because it could be different from editor to editor.
Mm-hmm. All right. So then at the bottom of that inverted pyramid, so I actually had copy editing here.
Ooh.
Because I think I'm using it a little different than you, but this happens, which is why it's important to clarify. And proofreading. So again, copy and proofreading. Again, copy is just slightly above proofreading, which is where you're going to be looking for like spelling, punctuation, and grammar mistakes, typos, kind of what you were saying proofreading is, which is true, but just kind of the basic, like like you said, repeat words, grammar, spelling, all of that kind of stuff, making sure that it's just basically readable to anyone that knows the English language or whatever you're writing in. Whereas proofreading, technically, and I don't hear this used a lot, it's probably used mostly in traditional publishing still, is where you print it out and then you do the same thing. So proofreading is technically like where you catch mistakes because it's in a different format than usual. And this is often advice that writers will give. If you print out your manuscript and you edit it that way, you will catch things more.
It's
because you're used to seeing it on a screen. People also will say like change the font to edit because you'll see the words differently, which is kind of the same concept. But yeah, so in my vocabulary, copy editing is like proofreading, and then proofreading is on a physical page.
Is copy editing on paper.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah.
So,
and I know a lot of people who are posting jobs. So if you are looking for work as an editor, will often say looking for a copy edit and proofreader. What they mean is usually they're looking for a line editor and proofreader. And proofreading, traditionally is on paper, and it is an amazing way to catch extra mistakes. However, a lot of professional proofreaders don't even do that anymore. I haven't had a printer until
it's expensive now.
It is very expensive now. But a great way to do that as an editor, and you can ask when you're hiring editors too, what is your methodology for proofreading? I usually use Microsoft Word with track changes, but I use the little voice reader and I have it read to me too while I'm reading. So I also get that. You'll definitely catch a missed word. And as long as your eyes are still on the page, you'll see like a misplaced comma because it'll sound different. So you definitely want to make sure your proofreader is doing something to switch up the format, especially if it's the same proofreader who worked on your line edit or whatever. But definitely clarify, because copy edit they could be expecting it to be combined with a proofread, because that happens a lot. Or they could just want a line edit and they get user. So again, you just have to check. I wish we had like more standardized like expectations, but we really
have to just
don't.
kind of like read into the context. Like sometimes if they say something like, I just need a copy edit, you're like, okay, the just makes it sound like you mean proofread. Like you just want it to be like the grammar specifics. Whereas if you say, I want a really good line editor, okay, well now I'm, and proofreader, maybe you're like, okay, well, then what you're looking for is that middle of the pyramid kind of edit. So, but clarifying is always good.
And some people a lot on like gig work sites, which is where editors, you can find a lot of editors on those. Just know that if you know someone or you know of someone who is an editor, contact them directly is usually much preferred. Like go research them and research all the reviews on the gig work site. But if you can contact them directly, then you get to pay less because they don't have to charge as much. Because gig work sites, as much as I love the way I can find clients on there and the opportunities I've had, they take such a big percentage. And so editors who are working on there a lot end up having to increase their rates to cover that percentage. So best way to do it, cut out the middleman, contact the editor directly. Do your research and make sure like they're a good editor and stuff. But if you can find them on there and then find them separately, not on there, is what I would recommend doing. It'll save you money. The editor will appreciate it because they don't have to see a big chunk of their money going to Upwork. But like I use Upwork a lot. But Upwork and Fiverr too, the other thing is you do as an editor, if you're getting into editing, there is payment protection there. So if you do have a client, this has only actually happened to me twice ever, or have an client who has just not paid, just simply never paid. They'll cover it. They'll cover that for you and they'll pay you. So you do have that purchase protection, which is nice. But again, I've been doing this for basically since I got out of college, so a while, and it's only happened to me twice ever. And one of them was actually for a voice recording job. It wasn't even for an editing job. So pros and cons. But if you know the person and know that they're trustworthy, just contact them directly. It's so much better. But I was going to say a lot of the jobs on there will be like, you have to read as an editor going on there, the jobs that are listed on those sites. Great way to also get your feet wet and just take the low paying. And we know they're not paying well enough. If you're just trying to get experience and reviews, do it. They'll be very grateful. You kind of just have to, unfortunately, because the
Mhm.
industry is not paying very well, and it should be. But the more experience you have, the more you can charge, the more people will be willing to pay. So you got to do it somehow. Might as well. And then just read it, because read the job descriptions in detail, because the title would say like need a copy editor. And then you'll read it and it'll say need someone to read line by line and also make sure that the development and the structure is what it blah. That's a developmental edit and a copy edit separately. So you need to make it clear that that is 2 separate edits that you would be performing, and that they should be paying you for 2 separate edits. Same with copy editing and proofreading.
It does feel like sometimes they'll say copy edit, and because they think they can like pay less for that, and then they'll just slip in, oh, and also a developmental.
Oh, and
edit.
also,
like, but I still know the difference. Like you can't just like slip it in and trick me.
And also, they do it all the time. All the time they added and also, and that usually means that they're asking for 2 to 3 edits. And after like catching a few jobs on there and just getting very, very underpaid for them, so I would have some reviews on those sites to get people interested, I will let people know, hey, I'd be happy to work on your project, but just so you know, this is these are what these different edits are. These are my rates for them. I'd be happy to work with you. And just let them like know what your standards are and what they're asking for, because also like we're talking about now, we're all writers and editors, and a lot of this is new. If you haven't been an editor. So if this is new to you, it's not that you don't, know the industry necessarily. It's just something you don't know until you know. And these people don't know, and they will probably never know, many of these clients on here.
True.
Because you have to also think, well, yes, the dream is to always work on editing, young adult fiction or whatever, books and fiction or nonfiction, whatever your genre is, like that's the dream. That is not going to be the case a lot. You're going to have to work in genres that you don't particularly enjoy. And they deserve just as much of your attention as a book that you do enjoy. I do a lot of nonfiction editing, not my favorite, but you know what? It's valid and needs to be done well. Lots of like editing web articles, like that kind of stuff, editing web content. So those are jobs that are definitely worth picking up. They all count towards editing. Those are typically the web editing, those type of jobs, email editing. Those tend to be more like kind of a combination of all 3, but just so you know, it does count towards your editing profile. It does count towards your reviews and experience as an editor. And yeah, they don't pay great. And yeah, they have no idea what they're asking for, and they never will. So you can educate them politely, let them know what, in terminology that the industry actually uses, what they're asking for and what you can do for them. So a lot of that, and this, with new authors too, like if you're an editor out there and you're like, this person's like, this is my first book, or I wrote this with my daughter. I've actually seen both of those so many times. Lots of like moms writing books with their daughters, which is very sweet. But a lot of them are like, this is the only book they're planning to publish, like this is like kind of like a one-off. They don't know, and they're probably not gonna know unless you tell them. So, be nice about it, but just tell them they don't know. So that's something as an editor just to keep in mind. And ask questions if you're a writer and you don't know. Just ask the editor. They would love to tell you. I mean, I would love to be asked questions by writers instead of them. I want them to know what they're getting. I would hate for them to be disappointed because they think I'm giving them something and it's not actually what I'm giving them, because we're not on the same baseline. So just ask questions and be honest. It can be great. And if you find a great editor, you can work with them on multiple books. Like, don't stiff your editors and be polite, and like listen to their advice. And you can use them over and over again, which is really great.
Yeah, you develop like a relationship with them, and then you don't have to like do as much negotiating and stuff. So it's a little better for everyone involved.
And I typically for my clients will grandfather them in, which means whatever rate that I charge them when I first edited for them, even when my rates increase, and they do periodically, I won't increase it for them. So I know a lot of editors will do that too. And if they like you and they like your book, or they know that your work is really good and requires like less intensity, like has like less to go to be perfect, they might charge less for that too. So it's definitely good. However, if you have an editor and you find, this is something I've come across working for an agency, I had this more than anything, not with my freelance clients. They've mostly been wonderful, but when I worked for an editing agency and I got a lot of clients handed to me, I had clients who had a problem with every single recommendation that I gave, regardless whether it's developmental, copy, proofread, had a problem with absolutely everything that I said. And my feedback would always be, well, I understand you certainly don't have to take these. I said, you did hire an editor to learn how to make your book better. If you disagree, I recommend you go get a second opinion. That's absolutely fine. You don't have to work with me again. But if you're finding that you're getting a lot of the same notes, then maybe reconsider going back to the drawing board on some of this stuff, which is true.
And yeah, this is like one of the things you have to kind of bite the bullet and accept as a writer, right from the writer's end, that I think that the dream is that you will send your book off to the editor and they will come back and say, oh my gosh, this is perfect. No problems. You don't have to do anything, because you want to think like, oh, I did such a good job. Like they're not going to find anything. But the truth of the matter is that even if you are really, really good, they are going to find stuff, because
it's their
especially,
job.
yeah, even if it's like 50, 60,000 words, you think you made no mistakes in 50 to 60,000 words, let alone 100,000 words or whatever length you happen to be. There are going to be edits, and you have to just accept as a writer that that is good, that the book is now being made better by those edits, and that editor's helping you, right? Unless the editor's just being mean and like insulting things. But if they're just saying like, hey, maybe use a different word here, don't be like, no, that's the only word that works. Like try it out, see if a different word works.
Yes. Or if your editor says, hey, this conversation strongly rings of misogyny, and I don't think that was your intention, just double checking here, you might want to try XYZ if that wasn't your intention. Right. Maybe take that note, maybe consider that note for half a second. I've actually given that note to like 3 or 4 different clients. Again, through that agency.
Common. So this is kind of my philosophy with taking edits, right? So we said like, I think 95% of edits you should probably take. I said 90, 95. Err on the side of 95, because I feel as writers, we're just so likely to say like, no, that one's fine. That they just didn't understand. Yeah. If an editor is looking over your book and they point something out, they might incorrectly diagnose the problem or the solution, but they have correctly diagnosed the problem, right? So if they say this sentence is awkwardly phrased, or if they just change the structure of the sentence and you see it in track changes and they're like, you're like, oh, they changed the order of the sentence or something. Maybe they didn't change it to the correct way it needs to be, but you definitely should not leave it the way it was originally. There is a problem there that they noticed. If they were reading through and it sounded awkward, maybe they did their best to change it, but they ended up changing the meaning. And so you have to say, okay, how do I change the original sentence, but still maintain what I intended there? Yeah.
If you're like, oh, I wrote it this way for a reason. Yes. How can you retain the reason, but address the problem? Because that's an editor's never going to know like all of the depth and ins and outs of your writing.
And they don't know what you're so this will happen with Ash sometimes. When Ash edits, she'll like change a word and be like, you know, you've used this word a lot or whatever. And she'll change the word and I'll be like, wait, no, that's not even close to what I was trying to say, which means that there's something wrong in the sentence that was indicating that you thought that was the correct change, right? So now I have to go back and say, okay, if she thought that I meant, you know, just use a preposition. If you change it to from, and I'm like, wait, that's not what I intended. I intended it to be from above or whatever, you know, like a different preposition there. I'm like, okay, something went wrong further back in the paragraph that made her think something was happening here that isn't happening. Yeah. So then you have to go back and change that. And so if an editor points something out, different editors have different styles. Sometimes they're going to say, you know, reword this. Sometimes they're going to reword it for you. But if they point it out, they're probably right about the problem, even if they're wrong about the solution. So if they correct a word to a word you don't like, and you're like, no, I'm not going to change it to that word, then change it to a different word because they thought there was a problem with that original word. Yes. Yeah. So that's my general philosophy. And again, like 5% of the time you're going to come across something and you're gonna be like, oh, I don't think that's really I think that word is good. That is what I meant. Maybe she thought I meant something else. But like 90 to 95% of the time, at least like acknowledge the diagnosis of the problem.
Yeah, I think that's a very good rule of thumb. I agree. And if you find an editor and you're disagreeing with everything that they said, it could be one of two things. It could be an editor who does just not understand you. They're just not hitting your tone of voice. They're just not getting your style. It happens. I think that's actually pretty rare. Usually editors are pretty flexible when it comes to that. That's why they're doing what they're doing, but it can happen. And if that's the case, then maybe request some sample edits, and you guys can request. I wouldn't request more than 2 chapters of a sample edit. I think 1 chapter is good as standard. Normal. 2 chapters you can request. So you can request sample edits too before you hire, even if you have hired an editor and you're not liking what you're seeing. You can do that. Not a bad way to just make sure you're kind of on the same page stylistically. But the other reason, if you're finding that you're like, I just really strongly disagree with a lot of these, you might not be ready to hire an editor yet. And that is not a reflection on you or even your book. It just means that you might not be mentally, emotionally ready for it. And it is absolutely a stage you have to get, you kind of, like we said earlier, not related to this at all. You have to mentally prepare yourself to know this is going to be someone who is, because I'm paying them to, going in with a knife and chopping apart this book to see what's wrong with it. What can I fix in it? Their entire job is to tear down your book, basically. And they're going to hopefully do it in a nice way and be really communicative about it. But that is their job. And that is what you're paying them to do. So if you're not ready for what you're paying them to do, don't pay them to do it. You're not going to be receptive. So if you have like, maybe have like a beta reader look at it, or get some sample edits and see how you're reacting first. And if you're like, I am just strongly against all of this, you're still too attached. That is okay. Take a break, put it aside, go work on something else, maybe come back to it in a month or two, see how you're feeling. But don't waste your money if you're not ready. That's not a bad thing at all. Just don't waste your money if you're not ready, because you'll have to do it again later when you are ready. So so don't do that.
This is my question for you, because I kind of go back and forth on how I feel about this. So we talked about like the 3 different levels of editing, right? And so let's assume that you need all 3, right? Do you think you should get a different editor for each one, or should you have the same person looking over all 3 levels?
Here is my, sorry, I just heard a loud sound in my house.
Oh, I thought like, oh, that was a no, question. She looked confused.
No, it is a great question, actually. It is a great question. And I've actually said this to people before. Just making a note to cut out whatever just happened, whatever just exploded in my house. So my philosophy on this is strongly that assuming that you like the first edit you get, if you're doing all 3, you get a developmental edit and you think this editor is great, they totally get what I'm going for, their feedback is like at least 80 to 90% what I'm looking at, I really like this, I think it's great to work with them on your copy edit, line edit, whatever you want to call it, content edit. I think that's great because they're already familiar with the structure. So they're going to be more apt to catch inconsistencies and to know where you're going with the story. They're already into it. They're already immersed. It's going to be a lot easier. So they've already read it once. That's great. That means now they're going to read it again, and they're going to read it with an even closer eye. I think it's awesome. That's my favorite thing to work with. However, proofreaders, yes, a skilled editor, if it's a skilled professional editor with experience, yes, you can go ahead and hire them to do your proofread too. They will totally be able to do it. But if you're not 100% like 100% confident in your editor's abilities, maybe you're like, okay, I really like this edit and I used them for both of the first 2, but I feel like maybe there's like a more experienced editor out there that I can afford to do the proofread, do that. Because getting the different set of eyes, that's all that it's about. It's not a reflection on the editor. If somebody wants me to do the first 2 edits and not the last, I'm not offended at all. If you can afford to hire someone else to do your proofread, I think it's a great kind of extra safety measure. Not that I can't, and I usually have people hire me for the proofread too. That's totally fine. And I definitely put in as much effort as possible, but there is that added safety measure that I can't synthesize there, where I'm like, oh, I haven't seen this before, because I have. So your brain more naturally tends to skip and not notice things if you've already been through it twice. So that's why I think hiring a different proofreader can be really helpful. Not 100% of a necessity, but can be good.
No, I think that's good, because that's kind of where I was coming from, where I want as many eyes on it as possible. So if you know that you need multiple edits and you only have so many dollars to spend on it, should you go with as many eyes, with different edits as possible, or do you stick with the person that I guess gets what you're trying to do because you like their style and everything? So but the proofread would be the place maybe to diversify there a little bit. That makes sense.
I think the continuity between the developmental edit and the content edit is just so valuable. Like, I know, at least for me, it makes when I've gotten to do a developmental edit originally, and then I get to do a content edit, I know my content edit just flows so much easier because I know exactly where the author is going. Because usually also we've talked about the developmental edit, and that's something too, when you're hiring an editor, ask in advance how much communication you're going to get, like when they're done with the edit. So like, are they going to be willing to do a re-edit? I won't usually do a whole re-edit. That's a lot of work. You'd have to pay me to do the whole thing again. And probably you're just going to get the same responses because my opinions as an editor,
still the same person.
Same person. But you can ask me to go over it again, and this is super common, you can ask for an editor to explain what they've given you. So if it's a developmental edit, maybe you have questions about what I put in the margin or questions about things in the report, ask me. I'd love to have a conversation. Some people will be like, they'll like exchange a certain number of messages about it. I don't have that. I've never had that with clients. I will just I'm happy to talk about it as long as it takes for us to understand each other, or for you to understand what I wrote, because that's what you paid for. So I'm going to try and make sure that you're getting the most out of what you paid for. So you want to work with me again. So I don't have that, but I won't do like a full on re-edit, but do check, because some editors will be like, I'll answer 2 questions, or I will, I'll exchange like this many, communications afterwards, which is not unreasonable, but I don't do it, but some do. Right. So do ask about that. But the continuity is so nice because you already know so much about the book if you've done a developmental edit, that the copy edit is just, to me, it feels like an extra level of like depth that I already have going into it. So that's my favorite. So I do sometimes recommend that to books. That's another reason I recommend it to writers as well. If I'm like, ooh, you really could use a developmental edit. I know you want a content edit, but you could use a developmental edit. And I'm like, if you use me for both, I will give you a discount because also it will make me better at my job. And I think that I could really nail this content edit like to the absolute best of my abilities if I get to do a developmental edit first. But otherwise, I'm not going to put in the effort because I'm not getting paid for it, which is not mean. It's just true. I can't take every job, and I can't take every job for the amount of money people want me to.
Yeah. I would think too that editors probably prefer one or the other, like in terms of developmental versus proofread, right? And then like in that middle ground, you probably get some overlap because it's the middle ground. So developmental and proofread are so far apart in terms of what you're doing. Yeah. But like the middle is close to both of them. So I would think that most editors probably prefer one or the other.
Yeah. So, some editors do not like developmental edits. I love them. Yeah. Some people don't want to write a 10-page report, and I get that. I actually really, really enjoy it. But some don't. So you can also ask like what the editor prefers to work with. If you're like trying to decide between editors for who am I going to hire for a proofread, who am I going to hire for developmental or developmental and content. You can ask like what's their preference, because I do charge less when I get to work on what I want to work on. Yeah, so, fair enough. Yeah. And like with proofing, sometimes people are really good because developmental is more like the story level stuff. Some people are really good at that, but not great at the specifics of grammar, or vice versa. Yeah. So you just want to make sure that, I mean, obviously they're not going to, well, I hope they shouldn't be saying that they offer something that they don't. So make sure that you're looking at what they offer. But so if they don't have proofreading on there, or they don't have copy or anything like that, just know that that's probably not something they do, because that's not where their skill set is. Yeah. But I mean, you can always ask. Yeah. But then you just can always ask for a sample. You can ask for a sample also of the 3 different types, because a sample developmental is very different from a sample content, is very different from a sample proofread. So don't be afraid to ask for those things. I don't think that's unreasonable. Even at the agency I worked for that had like a lot more like regulations than I typically have for my clients, they even offered at least 1 chapter sample for each type. Yeah. So do ask for samples. Even if they've posted samples and they have good reviews, ask for a sample, because you know what to expect. And you also get like, does this writer get me? Or does this editor get me, rather? Because maybe there's a better fit for your money. I don't know. It's just something. And it also gives you an idea of what to expect. So you're like, ooh, I did not react well to that sample. Maybe I'm not ready yet, which is okay. But also big warning for, there's a lot of companies out there, just so you guys know, that profess to be, they help you self-publish is what they say, and they'll offer editing services. Largely scams. Not saying that they're all scams. A lot of them are scams. So be careful. Not that you won't get editing services, but they'll typically charge you what you would get charged by a professional editor or more. And they're not going to help you really self-publish in any significant way, not beyond anything you could already do for yourself. I would way sooner hire a freelancer than that. Editing agencies, not the same. You can contact some, there are editing agencies out there you can contact. Do ask for samples, do look up reviews from people who've worked with the company. But just beware of the kind of like all-in-one type agencies you see online. They tend to either be scams or be very much not worth your money. So do look at that. Yeah. Yeah.
That's all I had. Did you have anything else?
I had something, but I can't remember it. There was like one more, I think it was like one more like word of warning I was going to give people. That I was like, don't get taken advantage of, guys. I don't know. I don't remember. Okay. I'll say it next episode. I'll red pen point it next episode if I remember.
We haven't done those in a while.
Yeah, we haven't, because we're not making any mistakes, because we're perfect, because we have no flaws.
Obviously.
Speaking of flawless work, how's your writing going?
Oh, thank you. It's good. I've been doing like, okay. So like my mom listens to this podcast, and I hesitate to say this because I know that she'll roll her eyes. But I have been like loosely doing a developmental edit on my own book series. Ooh. Not the whole series, just book 2, because it was a hot mess. And I go through various periods where I I work on like different books in the series, or maybe I go through the whole series and stuff. And here's why. I think I've said this before, but I'm going to say it again. I am no longer querying the series because it is very long, and I really love it, and I feel like it can be better than it already is. So I've just decided that I'm going to work on other books, and I'm going to get those published, and hopefully, and get an agent with those, and hopefully build like a career. And then when I have the skills, and when I have the agent, when I have the editors, then I will go back to the series, and then I can publish that, and then I will have all these eyes on it and all of these people that know my style and what I'm trying to do, and they will be able to help me make it the best it can be, because that is my goal. And it's really hard to write because it's a 9-book series. It's very hard to write that all and make sure that it's all coherent and that there are no issues and all that kind of stuff. So I'm just periodically, whenever I feel like it, whenever something occurs to me, going through and fixing things as I think of them, because I'm not in a rush. I'm not trying to get it done for a query. I'm not trying to get it done for publishing. I'm just doing it as things occur to me. So that's like roughly what I've been doing for the past several years.
Right.
One day they will be great and you'll get to read them. I think they're pretty good already, but I think they can be better. And I want to make sure that I'm being effective in all the stuff I'm trying to do with them. So book 2 was just, it's been the hardest one. I'm not gonna, of all of the books I have written, it's the hardest one. It's just, it started out when I first wrote it as a filler book. And then I was like, wait, that's terrible. I don't want to do that. So then I like added plot and stuff, and then it became good, but I wasn't doing it enough justice. And so now I'm doing like a structural thing.
Second books that happened with my trilogy. My second book is also,
it's so hard. Yeah. And so I've been moving scenes around and condensing stuff. I've already cut like 20,000 words, which is really cool because it was also super long. It was like 180,000 words. And I was like, this is not going to fly even for
if anyone out there
is
looking for an editor to cut words, I'm your gal. I'm like loving hearing
so
this.
Good.
So you cut 20,000 words.
I know.
You said it was 180,000?
Yeah, it's super long. So now it's around 160. And I mean, it's already so much better. I'm like halfway through it. But once I start the edit, my brain won't let me like X out of the file and leave it. So I can't leave it unfinished halfway through. So I'm just like steadily working through it. I'm doing other things. I'm just also steadily working through that. So
that's good. I mean, that sounds like a good thing.
Yeah, it's good. So, I mean, I haven't queried the book that I want to yet, because I'm still waiting on you, but that's okay. Don't feel any pressure.
Why is Mama Kim gonna roll her eyes at this?
Because I've been writing this series for like my whole life, and every time she asks me what I'm doing, I'm like, I'm editing the series, and she's like, can you do anything else with your life? So
that's too funny. I get that.
Yeah, but that's my plan. I have a plan, mother. Okay. Just saying.
She's like, it's all part of the greater plan, mother.
Yeah, that's great. I'm just I will hit a point where I'm very successful. I'm just not there yet. I mean, that's the hope at least. So yeah.
No, that's what's gonna happen.
Also, quick note, what were we talking about earlier? And I corrected you and I said sterile, and I inserted the word sterile into the conversation.
Oh, so about hospitals?
Yeah, probably. When I was writing my novella that I wrote a couple months ago, or whenever I wrote that, maybe it was only a month ago, there was a specific sentence, and I was trying to think of the word. You know, when you're like, I know there's a word for the thing I'm trying to describe here, but I cannot think of it. It was sterile. And I kept coming up with antiseptic. And I'm like, I know that's not quite right, but it's close. It's a similar concept, and it has the S in there. And so I was like, I know this is not the right word, but what is it? And I've just been leaving it, and it has been bothering me for weeks. And then in the middle of this conversation, suddenly I was like, sterile. I got it. I understand. So I wrote it down, and I'm like, I'm going to change that. So that's exciting for me.
I'm really happy.
I feel much more at ease.
So. I would feel so much like an itch that you can't scratch. Yes. That is perfect.
So
I'm so glad I could contribute. What was a totally off-topic diatribe that I chose to go on actually kind of came full circle. So everybody get off my back. Okay, I was helpful.
That's why it's good to talk to people, writers, about things that are not writing, because then you might think of the word that you forgot and could not put your finger on before.
And also just talk to people. And that's hard for me too. I know a lot of us aren't doing that. I'm not doing that. I actively will resist. and kick and scream and drag my feet, much like Karissa literally in college when I tried to drag her out of buildings, which is not an exaggeration, but
she literally dragged me until like strangers were around, and the social anxious, like the part of me that was like, you can't look that weird in front of strangers, decided to just go with it. So
there's two types of introverts. There's the introverts who don't really want to be noticed by people and are kind of apathetic to people. And then there's introverts who actively don't like people and don't care how uncomfortable they make them. And
I'm the former and you're the latter for the most part.
So it's okay to have all introvert friends, you guys. Just, mix up the variety.
Yeah. Get a little
and talk to
diversity
humans, you never know. Yeah. I wouldn't know the weird stuff I know about childbirth right now, if I didn't talk to just people. It's true. And is a lot of that useful to me? Honestly, even as a pregnant woman, it's not all that useful, but I have it, and I can put it in a book now,
Yeah.
So now you guys can too. You're welcome, because this kind of counts as a conversation, I think, with people. That's how I feel when I listen to podcasts. I'm like, what a wonderful conversation I just had.
Counts. It's at least a halfway conversation.
Exactly. It's half of a conversation. It's more than I get on my own. So yeah, get other voices in your head other than the voices in your head. As far as my writing updates, to nobody's surprise, I have not written anything. I'm still reading Chris's book, but the problem is, and here's why I'm going so slowly on your book, is because I want to get really into it, because I want to give good notes on it. And every time I sit down, I've been distracted because I was laid off, and I'm still looking for work, you guys. And so my brain, every time I sit down and I'm like, okay, I'm going to do something, because for me, I love editing. Editing is fun. It's so enjoyable. And so I sit down and I'm like, okay, I'm going to enjoy this. And I'm like, you don't deserve to enjoy anything, Ash, not until you find a job. So I'm having a really hard time. This is also why I've not been writing. I've been killing myself, working 12-hour days between applying for jobs. I think I said this last time too. I haven't changed anything. I'm still actively killing myself because because I'm mentally broken. So however, I'm trying to find a new normal. This is my new plan for finding a new normal that will enable me to get back to my own writing. And hopefully, what is it, Wednesday? Hopefully, actually this week, by the end of next week, I would like to be done editing your book. So my goal is to try and fall into a new rhythm that I'm comfortable with. Javi and I, my husband, if you guys are new here, have talked. And I think the plan is for me to find a part-time job instead of a full-time, which has never been something that I thought I could do. Or to find a collection of a bunch of different part-time jobs, which is I have 2 different contract jobs going right now that are editing jobs. And so then I can just keep picking them up. So some days are busier than others, and it's not as stable as a part-time job. It's definitely not as stable or financially useful for building a house as a full-time job. So I'm just like, house, please don't fall down on us. And then with the other part of my time, I'm working on our farm, because we do have actual registered farm business. So
I saw the website.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
Thank you. I started working on the website months ago, and then I put it all on hold because I was like, I told Javi then, I really need a legitimate 20 hours a week minimum to pour into this, just to get us to the point where we can go to farmers markets on the weekends. So right now that is the plan, and that's what he would prefer for me to do. And I would also prefer it. And so he just has more confidence than I have. And so he's like, just do it. So my new normal, I'm trying to get my head around, is I am taking care of farm stuff, all the admin side of farm stuff, and also the actual outside farm stuff, because I'm here during the day to do it, and contract work. And then, but that also includes and should include my own writing and editing. So I need to get that, work that into my brain, because if I tell myself that's part of my daily responsibilities, then I will not feel guilty about doing it. And should I probably address this weird misplaced guilt with a therapist? Maybe at some point, but now I'm, down a full-time job. That's later. I'll work on that later. But so I'm trying to just get into a new headspace where I'm writing, editing, and contract work / part-time work. All of that's in one field together, and it's all equally important. And the other side is farm stuff. So I've been spending the first 3 to 4 hours of my day, cleaning the house, feeding all the animals, which takes a long time, and then working outside on the farm. Because I also said, in 2 more months, it's going to be too hot for me and my big pregnant butt to get out there and do anything. So I'm trying to get everything that requires manual labor on the farm, done as much in advance as I can. So, so not tomorrow. Tomorrow is baking day. And, because I have to bake some stuff to get ready for the farmer's market. And then, well, to like get the recipes nailed down for the farmer's market. And I have to call the farmer's market. This is not details you guys want. I'm so sorry. But anyways, Friday, we're getting the last load of mulch that I need, because I have like 5 different gardens around the property, and I need the mulch to control the weeds so that I won't have to be 9 months pregnant, like trying to be on my hands and knees picking weeds in 103 degrees, because I will die within 5 minutes or less. Yeah. I'll just drop dead. Yeah. Don't do that. So so I'm trying to avoid that. So then that'll be done on Friday, which will be great. And then my other big chore is putting up field fencing to keep the freaking dogs out of my garden. I'm going to kill Ruby, I swear. She just walks in there like she owns it now. She's broken down systematically the different pieces of the fence that I already put up. And so now she's like, doesn't even care. So the field fencing is going to be a ton of work, and it'll probably take me the rest of the summer that I can manage to be out there. But so that's my thing. So my first like 3 to 4 hours of the day are outside farm maintenance stuff. I usually spend an hour or two doing like farm admin stuff, and then the rest of my day is editing, freelance work, contract work, part-time work, writing. So I just need to like get my head to like, that is your new responsibility, and it's perfectly acceptable to do that with your day. Since I'm already working 12 plus hours a day at minimum, because I don't know how to like be nice to myself. So that's my new plan. If anyone out there is wondering, whenever we do a writing update, like your writing update is like, here's what I'm doing about writing. And I'm like, here's how my life is falling apart and interfering with my writing.
I have to loophole myself into feeling like it's okay for me to write.
Yes. I'm like, here's how I'm trying to justify the entire reason that we created this podcast, and one of my greatest passions in life, for which I pursued a degree, for which I'm still paying off. Like,
oh my gosh.
But hopefully I'm hoping the new mindset will get me there, because I can't afford a therapist now. So hoping I can get there.
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah. And I mean, the other exciting thing is, because then I'll also get to be home with the baby, which is nice, because then we don't have to find childcare right away. Is it easy to work from home with a baby? No, it's not. It's really, really not. But if I get to control my schedule, at least I can like, work late at night, when baby's going to sleep for a long period of time. So that would be nice. So that's a blessing. So lots of good things. And I'm trying to tell myself there's more good things than bad things, so that I don't, so that I feel like I can actually do the things that I want to do. Yeah. Like write, like finish writing. But I stand by my goal to have a book finished by the end of the year. So I stand by it. I'm still going to do it. And I'm going to have yours. I'm hoping very, very much to have yours finished edited by the end of next week. Because my new mindset thing is something I just established yesterday, and I'm trying to get into the groove of it today, but my whole day was doctor's appointment today.
Yeah, fair. You gotta get into that mindset. Ease yourself in.
Exactly. So hopefully next week I'll have like legitimate like updates for you guys, because I feel like this is just Ash's whining corner. It's like it's Chris's writing corner and Ash's whining corner. But I am truly hoping that will not be the case much longer. I'm doing my best. I'm sorry that this is my best.
No, it's good. Your best is pretty good, Ash. So don't feel bad.
I did shower today, so I'm, accomplished.
There you go.
Yep. Anyways, that is all I got. Everyone's like, thank God she never shuts up. But if you guys enjoyed this podcast, or if you too learned something new about human anatomy, go ahead and follow us if you're not already. Leave us 5 stars below. We love to hear from you guys. If you guys want to leave us a review, we can read it on the pod. I don't know if we've done that before, but we do love to see your reviews. And if you guys have something that you want to talk about with us, you want to recommend a topic for the show, you guys want to tell us what you're working on, you want to tell us that we're crazy, you want to ask questions about editing or writing or whatever, we would love to hear from you. You guys can contact us on social media. We are the Scripturient Society on Instagram and TikTok. Lots of super cool stuff on both places to keep you guys motivated during the week, so that you do not do what I do and put writing on the back burner. But also so you can laugh and stay happy. Also not like I do. I'm gonna try and be more like you guys out there, actually. And you guys can also email us at contact@storysirenstudio.com if you want to send us a longer message. That's our production company. You can also go to that website and check out our merch if you want to support us, or join our Patreon. And you can also join our writers group on Discord. The link is below, just like the skip notes. So if you don't want to hear me talking about placentas and umbilical cords next time, just know the skip notes are always in the episode description below. Just go to that time code. You'll get straight to the theme of the episode. So we're not trying to make you guys suffer. Well, I'm not, Karissa. I mean, I am, but Karissa might not.
We're not trying to give you Drapetomania, but hey.
We're not, but hey, if it happens, it happens. We've given you the escape route. It's in the show notes below.
Yeah.
But if there's anything else you guys want to say to us, we do love hearing from you guys. Thank you guys for being so supportive. You get new followers constantly on Instagram, and that just blows my mind, because even our sister podcast, That Pretentious Book Club, which actually has been we're it's kind of on like a unannounced hiatus over there and have been for a while. But even when we were like weekly, like we don't get followers over there nearly as much. You guys are so dedicated. And it's great to see what you guys are doing, and we like to hear from you. So I think that's everything that we've got for you guys. So until next week, keep writing,
and we'll see you on the next page.